Good morning and welcome to today's webinar. Is your security strategy working for you or against you? My name is Penny Horwood and I'm Associate Editor at Computing. As security platforms increase in number and become more feature-rich, they provide an abundance of information. But without the time or the expertise to act on it, that information can become overwhelming instead of empowering. This webinar brings together a seasoned technology director and a SOC analyst to unpack the growing disconnect between security platforms and real-world protection. They'll explore how this avalanche of technology and information can damage your security culture and posture. Whether you're feeling overwhelmed by alerts, managing multiple dashboards across a sprawling tech stack, or simply wondering if your investment is delivering the security you were promised, today's conversation will provide actionable insight and in-depth research to help you cut through the noise, improve efficiency, and regain control. Joining me today to discuss these issues are Rob Pocock, who is Technology Director at Red Helix, and Tom Fitton, who is a cybersecurity analyst also at Red Helix. I'm going to hand over to Rob and Tom now so they can tell us a bit more about themselves.
So, hi, Rob Pocock, Technology Director. My day-to-day role here at Red Helix mainly concentrates on looking for new technologies, new trends, new regulations which are coming online, and seeing what products and what technologies or what services we can provide to our customer base to either meet those regulations or have the best tools for their needs.
Great, thanks.
Hi, my name is Tom Fitton. I'm a SOC analyst at Red Helix. I've been working in technology, but specifically cybersecurity for several years now. The core function of my role involves getting hands-on in analyzing and triaging security incidents across a range of different environments and technologies. My day-to-day involves not only identifying and responding to threats, but also translating our findings into actionable insights for our customers. Also beyond incident response, I also play a role in onboarding customers, supporting both the technical setup of their security environments and guiding them through that process. Looking forward to talking with you today.
Thanks to you both. I'm also joined by Matt Harris, who's content strategist at Computing, and he's going to be sharing the results of some recent research with us. Before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. Some of you have already submitted your questions, which is great. But if you haven't yet done so, I would just like to highlight the Q&A box to our viewers, which allows you to submit a question for our panel. We'll get round to answering all of the questions either during the course of the webinar or at the end, so please do get those questions in. So now I'm going to hand over to Matt, who is going to be taking us through the first piece of research.
Yep, thank you, Penny. So just to dive into the research here, we surveyed over 200 IT and security professionals from a range of seniority levels and industries as well. Our first set of findings will focus on understanding risk appetite. Our second set of results explore the security vendor landscape. And our third and final set of results look at outsourced security and overall sentiment. So to jump into the first question that we asked here, how confident are you that your current security tools are delivering the protection that your organization needs? We found that 81% of people said they were somewhat confident or very confident in their security stack. And just 4% of respondents said that they weren't confident at all in their current security tools. Next up, we found that just 15% of respondents said they were always confident in having the resources to actually act upon the alerts that they're getting. And we also found that a third of those surveyed said they only sometimes, rarely, or even never have the time or expertise to act upon the information that their tools provide them. How would you describe your current organization's risk appetite? So we found that almost a third of respondents described themselves as very risk averse, and just over a quarter of companies describe themselves as having a balanced outlook on risk. And finally, for this section, we found that 31% of the people that we surveyed said their security posture has significantly improved within the last 2 years. And almost 1 in 5 surveyed have noticed no change in their security within the same period.
Thanks, Matt. Tom and Rob, we can see that most of our security respondents are really quite confident in their security stack. But this confidence seems to fall away when we ask about how well they can respond to what that stack is telling them. Do you think that in some cases the confidence in the tooling is perhaps misplaced?
In some way, yes, the confidence may well be misplaced. You've only got to look at the current news articles about breaches. We all know who we're talking about. And we see large, well-established, well-resourced, well-organized organizations getting breached. However, when you look at the results in the whole round, you will see that the tools are there, and the organization is confident that their tooling's good, but they seem pretty aware that they also lack some of the human resources needed to maximize the offerings of those security tools. All security teams who I speak to, they are truly passionate about protecting the companies they work for, but they're all under a lot of stress, and there's a lot of alerts to go through. What I think we need to start looking at is thinking as the security stack, not just as a technology, but as the people who use the technology, because you need both to be successful.
Right.
Yeah.
Tom, did you have anything else to?
Yeah, I was going to just jump in. Yeah, so often when we onboard new clients, even those who are relatively confident in their security stack, they're often surprised by the number of vulnerabilities that we find and how much time is needed to resolve them. This is where sort of specialist SOC analysts would come in to sort of cut through that noise and make sense of more complex tech environments. Because ultimately, that there can be a lack of understanding of how the tools really work. Because each tools will present you with a wealth of data but it's making sense of that data and prioritizing what to do with it. That can often be the hardest part. So in some way, people plus expertise in the tooling is what can give you confidence, not just can't have one without the other.
A third of IT professionals admit that they lack the time or expertise to act on the insights that their security tools provide. What does this say about the usability and effectiveness of cybersecurity solutions in the real world? Also, could vendors be doing a bit more to help?
Yeah, I just second what I just said really, which is that analysts are sort of increasingly needed to cut through the noise and help make sense of complicated environments. I think technology is only broadening in response to the growing and evolving threat landscape. This expansion of technology isn't always beneficial, especially for sort of a general IT team who are just trying to make sense of it. These teams often require less complexity than additional functionality. And in response to this, some vendors are sort of shifting towards consolidation of technology where lots of different features are put into a singular platform.
Okay, I mean, Rob, if
Yeah.
this is about what else can vendors do to help?
So yeah, I was just going to say we see this. So yeah, we see this a lot. The vendors I'm looking at the moment, there's not a tool out there which doesn't have some form of AI or machine learning built into it. Apologies, we're 7 minutes in and I've said AI already. But what we're seeing is that does help the effectiveness of the tools. It helps reduce the time taken for the analysts to do their work. But I also think it's really important to say at this point that AI and ML, they're tools for a SOC team to use. They're not replacing the SOC team. So it goes back again to that what we mentioned earlier. It's this combination of tooling and people to really get the effectiveness you need.
Whilst 83% reported significant or moderate improvements in their security posture over the last 2 years, nearly 1 in 5 have seen no change at all. What are the key differences, do you think, between the organisations who are making real progress and those who seem stuck in place? What roles do things like leadership, budget, or integration of tooling play?
Yeah, I see a lot of different organizations from very small to small and medium-sized enterprises to very large organizations to multinational, massive organizations in all different sectors, be it military, be it government, be it retail, be it law firms, private equity, etc. And I categorize pretty much every company in one of three buckets. Probably shouldn't say this. But I see a lot of organizations who kind of just stick their head in the sand. Yeah, it's not going to happen to me. I don't understand cyber. It's not my core business. it's not going to bother me, and and that doesn't work. Then I see what I call the headless chickens. We're seeing a fair bit of this at the moment, where there's a big breach, it's all over the news, and then suddenly the board is interested, like uber interested in security, and they make very quick, very rash decisions, probably not the best decisions, and they can spend a lot of time and effort and money doing the wrong things. And then the final bucket, which is the bucket I like, which is where you get a board and the leadership who actually sit down and talk to the CISO and the IT manager and network manager, etc., and say, what are our problems? What are our objectives to meet? And what's the best way of meeting them? So actually plan it. And it's those who we see get the most benefit out of budget and resources and time spent.
Okay, so it's that strategic long view that's crucial.
You have to, with any tooling you're putting in, with any processes you've got to put in. If you don't measure beforehand and then measure afterwards, you've got no idea whether it works or not. And say that long-term planning and that strategic planning, I think is vital, and that's when you'll get real progress. Otherwise, you could well be going in the wrong direction very quickly.
Thank you for that. Thank you both for your answers there. I'm now going to pass back to Matt for our second set of research findings, which focus on navigating the security vendor landscape.
Yep. Thank you, Penny. So yeah, just to move on, we found that our respondents use 3 different security platforms or dashboards on average. And 5% of those that we surveyed reported using 10 or more security platforms. Next up, we asked our audience what their biggest challenges were when it comes to managing their organization's security posture. So to really mirror what Tim mentioned there, keeping up with evolving threats was actually named as the most pressing issue when managing security posture, and that was selected by just under 70% of our respondents. Alert fatigue, too many tools, and lack of internal expertise were almost among the biggest challenges there. Then we asked our respondents if they agreed with there are too many security vendors offering similar products and services. And we found that 70% of respondents agreed that there were indeed too many vendors and overlapping products as well. In fact, only 3% disagreed with that statement in particular. Next up, it is difficult to differentiate between security vendors based on their offerings. So we found that just 7% of respondents said it isn't difficult to differentiate between vendors based on their offerings. And we found that 16% strongly agreed that it is hard to tell them apart. And 58% somewhat agreed with the statement as well. When evaluating security vendors, which factor matters to you? So out of the people that we surveyed, we found that technical capabilities were listed as the factor that matters most to potential buyers. And that took up almost a third of the vote. And that was followed by ease of integration coming in at around 20% and price just under that as well. Back to you, Penny.
Thanks, Matt. That's great. Fascinating stuff. So, with IT professionals using an average of 3 security platforms and 5%, rather jaw-droppingly, relying on more than 10, we must be reaching a tipping point where tool sprawl is undermining security effectiveness rather than enhancing it. How do organizations consolidate?
Well, I think without sufficient headcount or staff capacity, it can be easy to miss alerts from various tools. I think this is why we provide a consolidated view of all the sort of tools and alerts. In that we focus on integrating all the products that we use. Integration allows alerts to be prioritized based on metrics and not just urgency or volume. This enables sort of data-driven decision making and avoids responses basically being based solely on whatever tool is making the most noise or is the most recent.
Yeah, we saw this. Yeah, we saw this comment from Gartner probably about 5-6 years ago now of platform versus portfolio, and we've been talking as an industry about consolidation for just as long. But it's if I'm being blunt, it's something we're not very good at, because all vendors out there selling tools, they want their tool to be front and center in your SOC analysis screens or your views. So we probably need to, as an industry, get better at allowing consolidation within the tools themselves. But what we're finding is through acquisition, a lot of our tool vendors that they're getting bigger or they're growing rather, but by acquisition, and that naturally brings more tools and more functions into each tool set you've got, and that obviously gives you overlap. So we need to get better at it. Was what I'd say.
Respondents named keeping up with evolving threats as their biggest challenge. Can you provide any practical, actionable advice for our audience today who might be struggling with the same issue? Is there any such thing as a quick win?
I think if you want purely simple quick wins in the right sense of the words, I think if you can just get the fundamentals of incident response nailed down, then you can transfer it across any tool really which can vary in complexity. Whilst threats may evolve, that the way that you respond to them should remain consistent. And your approach to incidents is the most important factor, I think, of a working security team, because the incidents will vary, but you may be surprised at how adaptable the fundamentals are. So I think, in summary, the right attitude is what's important. The tools themselves you can be trained on.
When you're looking at evolving threats, there's two ways to look at them. You can look at the technically evolving threats, and most of your vendors of your security stack, should be able to keep up with those. They get regular updates and new features coming online, so that's good. But what we're finding as well is your security staff themselves, they need to keep up with the evolving threats as well. And the only way security staff really, really learn and your SOC team really get to grips with new events is to see them. Once they've seen them once or twice, they understand how their tooling reacts to that kind of threat. They understand what messages do or don't come in. They understand what it feels like. So what we see, and a useful tool is like breach attack simulation, where you can safely generate events in your own live environment. So like benign events. And that's a good training exercise for your SOC team. And that it's quick, it's easy, it's safe, but it does give them that evolving threat knowledge, which means when it actually happens in real life, they understand the mechanism, they understand the process.
Ranking just behind the keeping up with threats challenge was alert fatigue in the sheer amount of tools and platforms. Not surprising, really. We also had 70% of the respondents saying there were too many vendors and too many overlapping products and admitting that they struggled to differentiate. How can buyers cut through the noise? And do you think the vendors are doing enough to differentiate in ways that are meaningful to the customers?
I love this question. I spend my days and my weeks and my months looking at new tools, new vendors, new suppliers, new technology, and I can hand on heart say, yes, it's confusing. Yes, there's a lot of overlap between different products, all claiming to do the same thing, all fighting essentially for your same budget. But as I said earlier, the way in vendor land at the moment, in tool land at the moment, the way they tend to grow is by acquisition, and that brings in new features very, very quickly, and new functionality, but it also brings in that overlap. So I don't personally think it's a problem which is going to go away. I don't think we can really expect the vendors to solve it, but that's where the community and an MSSP as ourselves can come in. We run a lot of roundtables and events like this, and I'm always really, really pleased that how open security professionals are willing to help each other, in a closed forum or in a roundtable, to actually talk to each other to say, oh, we're using this tool because it does this and does this. Actually, yeah, we don't like that feature in it, but actually this bit fills the gap. So I would say, speak to your community, speak to your peers, speak to MSSPs, because they will all help you try and cut through that noise.
I think from a technical perspective, it still comes back to people, to be honest. And I think the collaboration is really important. I think sort of sharing ideas and, processes on how to handle the more technical components is what's really important.
Thank you for that. We're now going to go back to Matt for our final set of findings. Matt, over to you.
Thank you, Penny. So just to kick us straight off, we asked those from our audience how they viewed the role of outsourced security services such as SOC as a service or MSSPs within their organization. And what we found was over half of those surveyed are not using outsourced security at all, and that 10% of companies are using them as a complete replacement for their in-house staff. Next up, quite similar answers here. So around half of our respondents weren't looking at outsourcing at all, and 20% of those surveyed aren't outsourcing currently, but are planning to over the next year. How often do you feel overwhelmed by the volume of security alerts or information from your tools? What we found was 10% of respondents said they did feel overwhelmed by alerts on a daily basis, and 24% felt overwhelmed on a weekly basis. And that contrasts with 18% saying that they were never or rarely overwhelmed. And back to you, Penny.
Thanks, Matt. A real diversity of responses there. Around half of the IT professionals we spoke to aren't outsourcing any part of their security, whilst just under 10% are relying entirely on outsourced solutions. Rob, what do you think is behind such a diverse set of responses to outsourcing strategy?
Yeah, I'm not overly surprised that it is so diverse. We are in a diverse industry, quite often when we have these security discussions, we're talking to, as I said, sometimes companies the size of 50 people, and sometimes companies the size of 50,000 people. And each of those companies has to work out their own risk profile, which is obviously a balance between the security and their business outcomes. Example I always use is a fish and chip shop. I like fish and chips, obviously. Is they probably don't have to worry about having zero trust network access in their network, but they do need to make sure that if they've got a website where you can order your dinner on, your customers feel safe and secure putting in their credit card numbers, etc. So, compared to a school, compared to a hospital, compared to a government organization, everybody has their own different view of risk. Okay. And therefore, when it comes to outsourcing, we've tried historically over the years many different approaches now, and we tend to be flip-flopping between a full outsourcing to full offshoring, and then bringing it in-house again, or inshoring or reshoring. But the thing I always say with any outsourcing contract is it's not the end of the problem. We see this a lot, that some companies who try to outsource a whole department, a whole SOC team, etc., they want to throw it over the fence and say, it's now your problem. It's not my problem anymore, but it's still your network. It's still your data. It's still your customers. So what we're beginning to see is a more hybrid model, where a company will look at a specific task or specific process to be managed by a third party. That way you still got the context between your network, your understanding of your network, and I think Tom's got a great example about the CEO going on a holiday and being blocked because no one told his SOC team that he was going to a foreign country, and therefore they blocked his login. I don't know if you've got anything to say, Tom. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just highlight that. I think it's definitely not a case of just throw money at it and just expect, all your security problems to be solved. I think what's really important is the collaboration from the customer to the SOC team as well. So, for example, we had instance of high executive teams bringing valuable assets, i.e. their endpoints, over to business trips. And what's really important is those customers who let us know in advance of those sort of things are, that's a really good example of that collaboration, really, because otherwise if we weren't told in advance and tuned our rules to tune out those smaller things, we'd be getting all sorts of alerts as a result of that.
If any of our viewers are considering what an external SOC or other outsourced security capability could bring to them to supplement their current capability, what questions should they be asking potential partners?
I think actually what's funny is that
More of a question.
it's what question it's be prepared to be answered lots of questions yourself actually from your potential partners because they want to get to know you and your environment and if not that's a bit of a red flag, I'm afraid. I think ultimately first and foremost having a clear understanding of your entire IT estate before engaging with MSSPs to ensure the best fit solution is really important. Customers who clearly describe their environment to us enables sort of a smoother onboarding and faster incident response resolution once they get that service. I think you also want to understand what level of managed service, like Rob was saying, that you're getting. Do you want us alerting you only to critical incidents like P1s, or do you want us alerting you to everything? But also what's really important is, when it is outsourced, it is still your responsibility, to be looking after your security. You need to be cautious of those MSPs who will say that you'll never need to talk to them. And you can ask about, what tools are in the stack that the service provider is giving. But ultimately, you really want to know is what kind of service are you getting. I think that just summarizes our sort of main emphasis on it's actually about the people and the deployment of services rather than just throwing the kit at it.
Yeah. Rob, do you have a kind of a commercial perspective?
Yeah, I mean, from a commercial perspective, it's kind of the same answer. To be honest, it's like you need to spend time and effort understanding your own network before you can expect someone else to look after it for you. Because otherwise, as Tom says, there's going to be gaps. Well, the whole thing about security is the bits you're trying to avoid are the gaps, because that's the bit the hackers find, right? So it's making sure from a commercial perspective, if you're looking at an outsourced contract, that actually, and it sounds counterintuitive, have you got the resources internally to actually manage that time? You're offsetting or offloading, for want of a better word, the actual sort of security knowledge and skill. But have you still need to manage that contract and make sure you're getting what you expected and keep the MSSP honest.
With 10% of IT pros feeling overwhelmed by security alerts every day and nearly a quarter reporting being overwhelmed every week, how can organizations better manage alert fatigue without risking missing critical threats?
Yeah. So it's quite often because whenever we talk about alert fatigue, um, it's always, "Oh, I've got too many alerts." That's not always the problem. Having lots of alerts or lots of alarms, you know, isn't a problem if you've got a good process or a good playbook, which can be used, immediately by all your SOC guys. That can alleviate the fatigue as well. So for every incident type what comes along, yeah, create a playbook. Now your SOC team should be able to do that, and then over time it becomes muscle memory. Yeah, it's much easier and faster for the SOC guys than to work through that alarm list. And that also helps train your new or younger SOC members, because they've got for want of a better word, a script or a cheat sheet to follow. When they first start seeing those incidences, and again, it's just reinforcing that muscle memory. So I would say that alert fatigue isn't just about the number of alerts; it's about have you got a process to follow each alert. Tom?
Yeah, I think alert fatigue can really stem from two different things. Obviously, there's the too many alerts, but there's also repeated exposure to the same alerts, which can lead to desensitization. And when you employ sort of, when you have a dedicated team to manage that security, especially a managed services provider, those incidents are, you're exposed to a wide variety of environments, customer industries and technical needs. I think when you're, in a managed service, you're no 2 days are the same really, which can keep the work really engaging. I think individual organizations often face alert fatigue from monitoring just one environment, with repeated exposure to the same alerts. At an MSSP, we work in a large team, so we're not overwhelmed by the volume of alerts, and we have the resources to properly investigate and respond to each alert as well.
When we ask people what they change about their current security environment, simplification and consolidation were the things that came up most often. What practical steps can organizations take to make this happen?
Okay, it always makes me laugh that simplification can be so complicated. It's one of life's mysteries, I guess. Um, well, it's now I always say, in order to keep things simple, you need to understand them first. If you ever speak to an engineer who can describe something really simply to you, it's because he really understands it really, really well. So I would say to all our customers is get a clear picture of what you're trying to achieve, and that will actually, almost by default, almost give you a step-by-step guide of how to get there. But you've got to start broad. Okay, like I said, you don't want to be the headless chicken we talked about earlier. And as soon as you see some kind of threat, you spend all your effort and all your resources on that one threat type or that one attack vector. So a really good example of where things can be simply missed is shadow IT. Now we all have shadow IT in our networks. We all claim we don't, but we all have smart TVs either in the boardroom or at home. We all have Alexas. We have thermostats, and suddenly you get a new air conditioning system in the unit, and it's great because I can control it on an app. Now, all of those things get overlooked quite often in your security needs. So say that's probably my best advice is keep it simple, understand what it is you're trying to achieve, and then that will give you your step-by-step guide.
Yeah. Uh, I definitely second that, Rob. It's funny how sort of the commercial and technical, there is still that crossover, because I think the first and most important thing is once you understand your environment and what you need to monitor, then you can identify and implement the really shiny new tools by, big name vendors really. And that will help. I think you want good visibility of what you've got and what you want to protect. And then you can start to identify, what services you want to throw at it.
So, one very pertinent question that we've just had come in is how much is shadow AI likely to change the risk calculus that organizations face here? Rob, Tom, I'm not sure which one of you would like to take that.
Yes, I mean AI, is it's good and it's bad. It's like, and unfortunately, the media, and probably our industry as well. They will either sit on one side of that fence or the other, saying it's good or it's bad. But I think of AI as a platform, rather than as a tool. And AI is going to be everywhere. Where we're seeing some security risks at the moment is people using AI like ChatGPT, etc., to do their business cases inside their offices, and they end up putting a lot of company information into an AI engine to get a nice business report or a nice report come out of it. And I think as an industry, we're going to start to see a lot of that information, which not maliciously is put onto the internet. It's just people doing their job and wanting to present nice documents, etc. Yeah, that security or sensitive information. Sensitive information will get out because of AI. So I see some new technologies. I was at InfoSec 2 weeks ago. And a lot of the technologies I was looking at there was how do you control AI in your environment? That's not necessarily putting your own AI into your environment to help out your business processes. It's just the general workforce putting your network information and your security information into AI engines to help them do their job. I think that's a risk, and it's something we need to look at and say. In InfoSec 2 weeks ago, there were a number of vendors out there, claiming, I use that word claiming because I haven't tested them yet, but claiming that they can help you do that. And I think that's important.
I can definitely second what you just said, Rob. I think we actually actively in the SOC, we do see real world examples of people uploading things to, AI models, which are in the public domain, which can be, which is sensitive information. So it's definitely something that is really happening. We employ AI as part of our vendor offerings at the moment in the SOC. But at the moment, it is just sort of a tool to assist investigations. What's most important is, the actual trained people. AI is still in a evolving state at the moment, and different tools at different stages of development is definitely something that can be used as a useful tool. But you need to be really conscious of, especially the public domain AI models, what you are and what you aren't, uploading to them.
Another question we've had, this is interesting, is how much responsibility should the cybersecurity industry itself take for tool sprawl? Is it a symptom of the way that the industry has marketed its own products and services?
Personally, I would say that if we expect the industry to temper down their enthusiasm about what tools you want, we're actually restricting the industry as well by doing that. So I think it's a given; it's going to happen. As I said, all of these cybersecurity companies out there, they've all got shareholders, they've all got investments, they've all got people who own them, and being really blunt and honest, they all want to make money. And therefore, you're going to get tool sprawl. You're going to get. I used to have a brilliant presentation slide, which had probably about 1,000 logos on it, and I used to say to customers, just buy one of these each, and all your security problems will go away. We know that's not true. We know that would cause more problem. Actually, what you need to do is say, okay, I know what my vendor landscape looks like. I know what functionality they give me. Again, it's sitting down and planning. What are you trying to achieve? And then almost a tick box. Well, if I want to do these 6 things, then I can use those 2 bits of kit. If something else comes along, do I have to juggle them around a little bit? So the tool sprawl problem isn't going to go away. We need to get better at say, speaking to our peers, speaking to the community, and letting that evidential proof guide your purchases.
I think the question on that earlier was really good. I think in terms of taking responsibility, a legitimate way of looking at it is a lot of vendors are sort of prioritizing selling over substance. I think tools are often marketed as sort of silver bullets to a lot of problems, but in reality, they require a lot of tuning, integration, which is the key thing, and expertise to be effective. And I think working in the SOC, I think some tools that I'm aware of, a lot of tools, especially the big name ones, can often not play well together. I think a lack of integration in the industry is, in my opinion, quite a big issue. I think it's all about, minimizing what you need, and then you can target, what resources you need, again, rather than just throwing more tools at the problem.
We still have questions coming in, but unfortunately we are getting a bit low on time. Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Tom and Matt too, for your thoughts and insight today. It's been fascinating, and I think the findings reiterate the importance of trying to take a longer view of cybersecurity and trying not to get too burned out by the everyday firefighting. If your question hasn't been answered, we will be passing those on to Rob and Tom for them to pick up with you offline. So again, Rob and Tom, thank you very much again for your time today, and thank you to our audience for your engagement and your questions. We hope to see you all again soon. Goodbye.